Go first? Yeah, yeah. You're welcome to either speak there at the table, or if you want to come to the podium. Okay. All we need you to do is just state your name and.
Peter Goodman. And before I start, I got to say I enjoyed that performance, particularly because I had been watching one very similar to that from Seattle, where my great-grandson, whose birthday this is, was turning 10 and was performing. But so it kind of made me sad as well as enjoying it. But I want to thank you all for scheduling this discussion today. Obviously, we think it's a critical one, and so do some of you. I'll briefly introduce the subject, why we need a Citizens Police Oversight Committee or board or review board, and how it would help Las Cruces. Dr. Earl Nissen will then talk about how it's working in some other places, particularly where there are hybrid models involving OIC, as I think we might end up doing here if you folks approve this. And then NAACP Chair Dr. Bobby Green will discuss in more detail the nature of the problem here and what else is being done or trying to be done about that. And then finally, one of the counselors urged us to address legal issues. How does our proposal comport with the city charter, first of all, with the existence of other committees in the city, and particularly important with the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement of the Las Cruces Police Association, and similar rights that are embedded in our statutes, such as the Peace Officers' Bill of Rights. Spoiler alert, it's fully compatible with all of those. I had intended to start by playing the 38-second video in which Amelia Baca is shot to death. I was asked not to do that, so obviously we won't. Without getting into the details of that, most of you have probably seen it. That video is troubling. Even law enforcement professionals that I've shown it to or talked to about it, who think that the shooter did not disobey any rules, are really troubled by it and think they would have handled it otherwise. 2 points from the standpoint of what we're talking about today. One is, a year and a month out, we have no information from the Chief of Police, the 3rd Judicial District Attorney, the City Manager, the Attorney General of the State of New Mexico, nothing from nobody. We don't know if the officer is going to be charged or has been cleared. But the other point is that if the Las Cruces Police Department's training and internal rules insulate the shooter from discipline, the public should understand that and understand why, and a CPOC or board would be looking into helping make that clear, but also into helping to improve those rules and training. As Dr. Green will discuss, Amelia Baca is not alone. Folks could reasonably argue over the details of any of these shootings, but I don't think anyone could deny that there have been a disproportionate number of what we'll call questionable shootings for a city our size in the last few years. So what would a Citizens Police Oversight Board do? Many things. First, obviously, it would bring the public into the process. Focusing more brains on any problem at issue, we often reach some wisdom. But in addition here, a diverse board, including people often marginalized in the US and even Las Cruces, would bring fresh ideas to the discussion. And by opening up the discussion, we'd both improve law enforcement and educate the community. The board would review policies, practices, and procedures and recommend improvements. It might have identified a problem like the chokehold that Officer Smelser used on Mr. Valenzuela, and which was later abrogated as an approved tactic. It might or might not have identified that. We don't know because it didn't exist. There's also To give you another example of what I would hope a board would do, there's a legitimate issue about how far you chase somebody who's got a warrant out on him or her for drinking in public, urinating in public, DWI, whatever it might be, but not a violent crime. Obviously, if you stop a car and somebody in there has a warrant for a really violent offense or is a present danger to the public, you want to get that person off the streets. But if it's somebody for some non-violent, certainly non-capital offense, maybe you chase the person, but at some point, let them go. Don't get into a fight, a big argument or a chase that could endanger bystanders, the police officer, and or the victim. So that kind of decision, which the chief of police gets to make, the public also has an interest in, because we could be bystanders. We could be suspected wrongly of something. Or my great-grandson, who is of color, could be running from some warrant that doesn't mean anything and get in a fight with the police and be dead. So there are those kinds of issues that it would address. CPOC or board would also enhance police communication with the public. First of all, it would be open to and encourage and likely gain some trust in people who are afraid to bring complaints about the police to the police because, wrongly I think, they probably think, they may think they won't get to leave the police station if they bring a complaint about the police to the police. It also would help explain the police. There are a lot of situations where somebody in law enforcement does something that doesn't make sense to a bystander, but actually is what that person has to do in that situation. CPOC would not only help communicate that to the public, but help be believed by the public. Evidence from other cities indicates that crime rises when there are well-publicized incidents, such as we've had, of police violence or alleged police violence. If a board could limit those at all, that would not only help with our public treasury, but might help reduce violence against the police, make them less of a target, encourage more people who are witnesses to cooperate. Further, officers who are aware that a board may be taking a look at what they've done, even in minor incidents, and see complaints, they may tend to conform their conduct to the rules a little more consistently. We're not wedded to the language of the proposed ordinance. There's room for tinkering. These councils, as Dr. Nissen will be saying, work in many, many cities. They've dealt with the same kinds of problems we would have to hear, whether you call it a commission or a board. We need one. Only a couple of points seem essential, and after I mention them, I'll sit down and let Earl take over. But first is that the board or commission get all documents, not just what the police chief chooses to send. Secondly, that it's a diverse board with no one unduly biased against either the police or any ethnic group. Bottom line, and I'll be brief on this because I think that Dr. Green's going to address it more fully. What we're doing is a spectacular failure, whether you count by dead people, by corpses, or by huge settlements where the city didn't even like its position enough to even think about going to trial. And while ultimately the safety of our police officers is essential and a top priority, some potential changes might help on that score, and other suggestions would improve citizens' safety without unduly endangering police. Ultimately, the knowledge that working officers have of what they see on the street is essential, but opening the discussion up in a way that forces the police administration to look at alternatives but leaves law enforcement able to reject suggestions and advice cannot hurt. Dr. Nissen?
Mr. Mayor, I was going to ask, how many of you are here to speak about this issue?
Can you raise your hands? Keep them up for just a minute, please. So I've got just one on this side. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, thank you.
Okay, before I want to...
I just need you to state your name, Dr. Neeson.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Roland Nissen, and I live in Las Cruces. I want to make some assumptions before we say and tell you what we would like to see in the Oversight Board. You should have a copy of this. I think she distributed it to you. There seems to me there's some interest on the part of the council for discussion on police reform because of approving this work session. Second assumption that there are over 200 citizens police oversight boards in the United States giving support to the idea of having a citizens oversight board in Las Cruces. Also, there are no two oversight boards alike. Fourth, the OIR is respected and a competent organization to do inspections of police complaints and works with citizens oversight boards in making certain recommendations are carried out by the police departments. 5, that an ordinance establishing a police oversight board would assist the council by having an outside group that would monitor police complaints monthly and making public reports to the council. 6, that the present OIR contract does not cover investigating critical incidents such as police shootings resulting in injury or death. OIR should cover these incidents. As Mr. Donaco, CEO of OIR, and I heard him say this at a public meeting that I virtually attended in Eureka, California. He said, for example, as in Anaheim, we are immediately notified of an in-custody death, officer-involved shooting, or another critical incident. And then we work with the officer and city manager to provide some preliminary information to the community-based review board about what is happening in your city regarding police involvement in a critical incident. This would include having an OIR representative visiting the site of a critical incident along with members of the review board. OIR would continue to keep the review board apprised of the investigation. This type of investigation could have, if in the contract, had been done in the LCPD shootings. I am assuming critical incidents investigations will be added to the new OIR contract. 7, having a Citizens Police Oversight Board would open up lines of communication between LCPD and the community. 8, that the city hiring an inspector general for the oversight committee only increases more secrecy since the oversight meetings are closed to the public. I did an inspection of public records request of the minutes for this committee. Of note, during the December 21st, 2022 Oversight Committee meeting, a discussion took place about having public attend their meetings. Mr. Tucker, member of the Oversight Committee, said, if they have an agenda, meaning the public, that they are trying to draw us into, then let's get it out in the open, get it filmed. We can tell everybody no, they presented, it had nothing to do with us. They got their 5 minutes of fame and they were tossed out. That doesn't sound very favorable for public participation. Also, the Inspector General falls under the city legal department, so is not an independent inspector who would possibly be handling police department complaints. The job description for this position does not directly assign inspection of police complaints as an assigned duty. We are paying this person $124,000 annually. Number 9, the citizens review boards in the U.S. go by many different names. We have in the ordinance used oversight board and have discussed that possibly has managerial connotations. We were willing to discuss this after our presentation. So in my presentation, I will refer to the Citizens Review Board for Las Cruces. Because of time constraints, let me begin by telling what model of a Citizen Police Review Board we are requesting after reviewing the 5 cities' oversight plans that I've given you in advance. Number 1, we would use the hybrid model as defined by Nicole, which I've included in the header sheet for the 5 cities' summaries. First, a city needs an independent oversight board established by an ordinance that monitors complaints and is able to participate in the investigations of the complaints. The city must employ a professional investigative organization to conduct the investigations of the police complaints. This organization must be independent from a city council, the police department, and the Citizens Review Board. OIR is already contracted by Las Cruces to conduct investigations, and adoption of the proposed ordinance would give us the second part of the hybrid model. All 5 cities reviewed have this relationship between OIR and an established citizens board. Another purpose of the review board would be to cooperate with LCPD in sponsoring community education and events that would help explain policing in Las Cruces. Number 2, the hiring of an independent position to be called liaison or independent monitor, where they were hired to collect all complaints from LCPD Internal Affairs, the mayor's office, city councilors, and oversight members, or from others responsible for receiving complaints. Because we learned OIR at the present time does not get all of the complaints from the police department. This position would develop a process of getting the complaints to the review board for investigation and getting the complaints to OIR. This position would, with the assistance of OIR, obtain camera recordings and all police reports that can legally be shown from an incident. OIR would put together the final investigation report and send back to the monitor and review board. The review board would, within legal boundaries, keep the community apprised of what is happening with an investigation. The final OIR reports would monthly be given to the review board for release to the public after a complete investigation is conducted of the complaints. The monitor will coordinate meetings with the police department and the review board to review policy or procedural changes from OIR recommendations. The review board would be on the agenda for one of the monthly meetings of the city council to review the investigations and allow public input about the investigations. The reporting would be done within the law of protecting officers' privacy. Number 5, a budget for our proposal would include salary of full or part-time liaison independent monitor would be $50,000 or 100,000 if full-time. It would depend on a number of complaints that have to be dealt with, whether it be full-time or part-time. And then OIR, we're contracting them right now for $75,000. And then an important part is transcribing of minutes of meetings.
Excuse me, Dr. Neeson,
Investigation.
can you talk into the microphone? Yes, sir.
Another 50,000, I'm sorry. I'll go through those again if I didn't hear. A budget for our proposal would include salary of full or part-time liaison independent monitor would be 50,000 or 100,000. We are paying OIR 75,000, and then transcribing of the minutes, meetings, and complaint investigations, 50,000. This proposal is supported by the systems used in the police review boards in the 5 cities I have described who have iterations that meet the criterion of the hybrid model of police oversight. We believe that this type of oversight can help assure the community that proper investigations are made of police misconduct. By opening the lines of communication between the community and the LCPD, citizens would gain positive feelings for living more safely in Las Cruces. Our proposal would give the City Council a better opportunity for having more accountability and transparency of the police department. In the 5 cities packet, you have the ordinances that created oversight boards in Eureka, California, Santa Monica, California, and Boulder, Colorado. You can compare our proposed ordinance with these 3 with the understanding that these communities are having successful police oversight. I want to add to the Boulder, Colorado summary in the packet. Last Tuesday night, Peter Goodman and I did a 1-hour Zoom with the co-chairs of the Police Oversight Panel of Boulder. They reviewed their procedures for doing investigations, but they added, because panel members participate directly in the investigations of the complaints, they are given a $200 stipend monthly, and co-chairs each get $250 a month. Now I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Green.
Thank you, Dr. Neeson. Bobby Green, President of the Doñana County NAACP. Mayor Miyagashima, Manager Peely, and ladies of the City Council, thank you for the opportunity to listen to us today. We appreciate it very much, and we do not take this lightly. The City of Las Cruces, as you have heard, has already paid millions of dollars to settle excessive use of force lawsuits. I am aware of at least 4 additional multi-million-dollar lawsuits currently on the docket. Those victims who are represented in those lawsuits, they had families. We saw these beautiful children up here dancing and looking so happy and healthy. It's a beautiful thing to see. The victims of this excessive force by the police, I've seen the videos, all of those victims had families, they had children, they had grandchildren. Amelia Baca was killed in front of her grandchildren and her children. And so, civil rights have been ignored, basic human decency has been ignored, people have been killed, families have been forever broken. This is happening on your watch. But more importantly, this is happening on all of our watch. The entire city of Las Cruces, it is happening on our watch. We're paying for this problem. We are all paying for this problem. All of us are taxpayers. We are all, including you, are paying for this problem. Surely, we should be able to collaborate, to work together on a solution. Las Cruces now has the dubious distinction of being in the same category as other cities: Ferguson, Newark, Minneapolis, Louisville, Albuquerque. All of those cities have been called upon by the Department of Justice. They've been investigated by the Department of Justice, and sadly, it's time for Las Cruces to do the same. Therefore, I've already contacted, on behalf of the Doña Ana County NAACP and the citizens of Las Cruces, I've already contacted the Department of Justice. I've already requested an investigation. That is what we do when injustice needs to be addressed. As such, I've invoked the authority given to me by the Doña Ana County NAACP and the National NAACP, and I have requested an investigation by the Department of Justice. So, we have two options as I see it. One, we can tell the Department of Justice that we have made progress and we are collectively working toward a solution ourselves together, or we can wait for the Department of Justice to recommend a solution. The bottom line, we cannot allow the excessive use of force by the Las Cruces Police Department to continue on our watch. I'll close with a statement from former school board member Maria Flores and her husband, Dr. Ernest Flores. Even though we are not present, we are deeply committed to honoring Amelia Baca and all Las Cruces citizens that have had their right to life or their health taken from them by reactive policing. We believe in working together to provide a better relationship with the LCPD through the use of effective policing while protecting the human rights of all citizens. By supporting a Citizens Police Oversight Committee, or a hybrid model, as Dr. Neeson mentioned, the city and its citizens can promote organizational change. Successful police reform would reduce liability, create trust, improve accountability. Police reform is not too much to ask for to protect and preserve human life. It is also honoring those who have been needlessly lost. I agree with the former school board member, and I will say, Las Cruces, on behalf of the Doña Ana County NAACP, I want to thank you in advance for your willingness to work together to break this cycle of excessive use of force by our police department. And as Senora Flores said, police reform is not too much to ask for. Thank you.